Congratulations. On behalf of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, you must be extremely excited. You've just been drawn for an elk tag for this upcoming elk season. So at this point in time, you have an idea. Do you have a bull tag? Do you have a cow tag? And you also know where you need to hunt. So with that information, let's take it from there and let's talk a little bit about what you need to do.
Let's talk about arms and ammunition that are allowed for elk hunting. Manually operated centerfire rifles and handguns, at least 27 caliber, that propel single projectile ammunition of at least 130 grains. Manually operated shotguns, at least 12 gauge, firing single projectile. Muzzle-loading firearms, at least 50 caliber, propelling single projectile, weighing at least 210 grains. Bow with a minimum draw weight of at least 45 pounds. Crossbows with a peak draw weight of at least 125 pounds. Arrows and bolts must be equipped with a broadhead that has an outside diameter or width of at least 1 inch, with at least 2 cutting edges located on the same plane throughout the length of the cutting surface and may not exceed 3 1/4 inches in length.
Okay, so the first question you probably got to ask yourself is, do I want to hire an elk guide or do I want to come up by myself and do this on my own? There are people that are permitted by the Pennsylvania Game Commission. They are legally allowed to take you hunting as a guide. Some charge a fee, some do not. That's up to you. What we want you to understand is you can come up here and hunt legally in the elk season. You're not required to have a guide. If you decide you do not want a guide, though, you need to understand is you've got some work to do.
Okay, so if you're not going to hire a guide, what you need to start doing is planning from home. Think about what you can do from home that will increase your odds of success when you come up here to do your hunt. And what I would encourage you to do is go right to the internet, Pennsylvania Game Commission's website. We have an online mapper there that you can add the elk hunt zones. You can add an aerial photo, you can add a topographic map. It has roads on there. It has a bunch of the landscape features that you're going to be interested in. You can print those maps. The Department of Conservation and Natural Resources has an online mapper that you should also explore. And as well, we have PDFs that you can download off of our website that are specific to each hunt zone.
You need to get a sense of where your unit is. Some units have more public property than others. Some have more private land than others. You need to figure out, do I have a lot of public access or do I not? If you have a lot of that, then that makes a little bit of your work easier. If you have a lot of private land, you know, one of the priorities is you probably need to get up here and start knocking on doors. Get permission from these folks. You know, we've been hunting elk now over 10 years. Most of the private landowners that have elk on them are used to having people knock on their door, so they're not going to be surprised. So you've got about 10 weeks from today to the hunting season. Don't wait. Take some time now, get up here, get into your zone, start knocking on doors, get to meet these landowners. Please do not wait till elk season.
If you've hunted for deer or any other wildlife species in Pennsylvania, you're most likely already familiar with many of the regulations here in Pennsylvania. However, there are specific regulations to elk hunting that you need to be made aware of. Keep in mind as we review these regulations, they are just merely a summary of the regulations most frequently asked and misunderstood. For further information, I would ask for you to refer to your hunting digest that is provided to you when you buy your hunting license. And you can also call the nearest local regional office for further answers to your questions. Keep in mind, driving or herding elk is unlawful. Fluorescent orange clothing is required. All elk hunters and those accompanying them must wear at least 250 square inches of daylight fluorescent orange colored material, visible 360 degrees on the head, chest, and back combined at all times. Camo orange may satisfy this regulation if the total orange content is at least 250 square inches. What you also need to remember is that you are sharing the woods with other hunters that may be hunting other species of wildlife due to concurrent seasons. Let's talk about mistake and multiple kills. You need to assume that your shot has hit the elk and follow up with all shots. Elk travel in groups, so also remember that pass-through shots can take place. If you have mistake or multiple kills, you are required to immediately dress out the animal and bring it to the elk check station. Remember, it is unlawful to hunt, shoot at, take, chase, or disturb wildlife within 150 yards of any occupied residence, camp, industrial, commercial building, farmhouse or farm building, or school or playground without the permission of the occupants. It is unlawful to shoot into or through a safety zone, even if you are outside the zone. Think of a safety zone as a football field and a half. If a wounded elk gets away from you or runs into another elk hunt zone, please contact the elk check station immediately. It is unlawful to hunt from a vehicle, shoot at wildlife on a road open to public travel, to shoot across the road unless the line of fire is high enough to preclude any danger to road users. It is unlawful to alight and shoot at wildlife while being within 25 yards of the traveled portion of the roadway. Loaded firearms may never be placed in, on, or against any motor vehicle. Certain exceptions apply to individuals that qualify and have a current disabled person's permit from the Pennsylvania Game Commission. After you harvest your elk, you are required to mark and record the kill location. Flagging has been supplied to you to mark and record the location of the kill site. One flag will be placed at the kill site. The other will be posted at the road where you drove to pick up your elk for transport. Recording of the location of the kill site will require the use of a GPS unit. Write down the longitude and latitude coordinates. The flagging that you post at the roadside will have a place for you to write down the kill site coordinates.
All right, so let's talk a little bit now about what are you going to do when you are fortunate enough to harvest an elk. If you've never done that, I think the first thing that's going to come across your mind is, wow, this is a big animal. Maybe you've already elk hunted and maybe you've already experienced this, but I will tell you, if you've never harvested an elk, they are bigger than you think they are. They are so large that you can't even lift the legs to field dress this thing, so you need to be thinking about, what do I need to have with me? Hopefully you have a group of people, they can help you. If you don't, I recommend you bring some rope. Try to get this animal somewhere where you can tie the legs off in separate directions to give you access. I will tell you, you will not be able to field dress it by yourself unless you have these legs tied off. They are that big. So with that in mind, obviously you're going to need a sharp knife. When you field dress these animals, their hair is very coarse. Your knife is going to dull as you go through. As you work through this animal, if you're trying to peel back some of the hide. So you might even want to have a little hand sharpener there with you. You know, a lot of these hunts take place late in the day. So the last thing you want to do is be stuck out there in the dark with a dull knife and halfway through your job. So keep that stuff in mind. The question we get every year is, do I have to bring this entire carcass out of the woods? You do not. If you want to cut it up and pack it out, that's fine. If you want to leave rib cages, bones, and things like that in the woods, that is perfectly legal. What we need at the check station are the head, the antlers, and a proof of sex. Now, you know, obviously if it's an antlerless elk and you bring that antlerless head in, then that's proof of sex. And the same thing with the head. If it's got antlers, it's an antlered bull. So that's usually going to cover that. But you do not need to bring the whole carcass out, and once you get it out, that's really all you need to bring to the check station. I do want to caution you, if you are successful late in the day, please note the hours of the check station, because we don't want you to get out late and run to the check station and have nobody there. Typically we close somewhere around 6 o'clock at night. You have 24 hours from the time you kill this elk to get it to the check station. So if you shoot it at 4:30 in the evening, and by the time you do all your work and get to your truck, if it's after 6 or 5:30, don't rush it. Unless you've got to be somewhere the next day, you have 24 hours, so you certainly have plenty of time on the next day to get it to the check station.
Okay, so you've got your animal loaded up and you're on your way to the check station. The check station is located in the Queehana Wild area near the town of Piper. More specifically, you can find directions to it in our Pennsylvania Hunter Digest, or a map of where the check station is can be downloaded from our website. So when you get to the check station, one thing that you can expect to see there is a lot of spectators. There's a lot of people that are interested in seeing these animals come through the check station. A couple things that we ask you to bring in addition to the head for research purposes, we ask that you bring in a blood sample, the lungs from the animal, and if you harvested a cow, the uterus as well.
In addition to the samples you've been asked to bring us, we're also going to collect some items. We're going to collect weight, body measurements, and other tissue samples which test for CWD, brucellosis, and tuberculosis. After those are collected, if you harvest a bull, we're going to ask that you pull aside and we're going to actually measure your bull. As a Boone and Crockett score, I'm going to give your bull a gross green score, meaning it's a general score. It'll give you an idea of how big the animal is. However, to get an official Boone and Crockett score, you're going to have to wait for a 60-day drying period. After that drying period, you need to go to an official Boone and Crockett score, and you can find that information on booneandcrockett.com. Go to that person and they will give you an official Boone and Crockett score. After we collect the samples, the next step is your step. What are you going to do with the elk? If you plan on getting it mounted and having taxidermists do something to it, it'd be a real good idea to call the taxidermist, actually when you get chosen for an elk, and actually call him up and say, hey, you know, I got an elk, I was thinking about getting it mounted. At that point, he's probably going to tell you some things that you need to do in order to get things ready. In that situation, if you get one, be sure to take care of it quickly or else the animal may spoil. The extended elk season is the week after the regular season. The extended season area is outside of the elk management area. Be sure to look into your digest of where the elk management area boundaries are. In that situation, if you do harvest an elk, please call the regional office and we will take it from there.
All right. So this concludes the Pennsylvania Elk Hunter Orientation video. Again, I'd like to congratulate you on getting drawn for an elk tag and thank you for your interest in the elk program in Pennsylvania. If you have any additional questions, please call the North Central Regional Office, and I look forward to meeting you at the check station.